kick you off the show. What's up, guys? Four Corners back with another episode. I am one of your hosts, Ray. You can find me online at Rayvon Hackshaw. I've got CT and Peter here to talk basketball with you, basically. And we are going to just get right into it. I think we have a lot to talk about. So I'm going to bring in Peter first, Buckets since 88, former New Orleans citizen, now a resident of Homer, Alaska. Okay.
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Good. How are you? How are the Northern Lights? And any other Alaska news that I feel like you might find it interesting to tell us?
The Northern Lights are still there. I did see a bear in the last month walking along the beach on an island. So that was kind of cool.
That is cool. That makes two of us.
Oh, you saw a bear?
Yeah. I hiked some of the Appalachian Trail. I don't know. Maybe I've talked about that before in the chat.
Oh, something. You don't mean recently? Okay.
Not recently. This was in 2019. I met a black-bearded cub.
I was about to say, if we got bears in Arvada, there's problems.
Yeah, I think that. I mean, well, Arvada goes a ways, so maybe.
Yeah.
Out in the plains, but yeah. Anyway, to round out our trio today, CT, scouting extraordinaire, knower of ball, coach. What's up?
Too kind, Ray. Thank you for the introduction. But good to be back with you guys, and hype for a new season coming up. Should be fun. Looking forward to getting into some coaching on my end for my team, but also a new Nugget season as well. So looking forward to breaking it down with you guys.
Yeah, glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
So, since we've last talked, we've experienced pretty much all of preseason. The NBA, I believe, kicks off tomorrow. The Nuggets' first game kicking off on Thursday. Buckets, Peter, I want to pass it to you. If you, as the, I know you've been on a boat for a bit, so maybe you have questions for us as far as how preseason has gone, and I don't know, whatever you have. What have you been thinking about while you're away that you're wondering if has changed or hasn't changed or whatever it might be?
Yeah, so I guess I have seen a few, just clips of interviews here and there, and it sounds to me like Jokic and Malone are both not pleased with where the team is currently at. So I guess I'm just sort of curious on what you guys have seen that's different. Like what's missing, or is it a continuity thing? Is it just a sluggishness maybe of guys not picking up a basketball over the season? Like, what do you think the Nuggets need to sort of at least feel themselves like they're themselves again?
CT, do you want to take this?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's kind of a lot of new moving parts, I'd say, as well. Christian going to the starting lineup is a new kind of feature to what's going on. I know playing with Jokic, he's played with him for the past 2 years. It's going to take not as much time, but I mean, I think now that he's in the starting lineup, it's going to take some time for him to gel with the rest of the four starters. And considering he hasn't played many minutes with those guys as a 4-man unit, now 5-man unit in the past a lot. So I think that's probably part of the battle. I think some of the defense as well has been not great in the preseason, but I mean, it's preseason, so I wouldn't take it all at face value. So, going to be some things to clean up, but at least that Minnesota game, they kind of won the one game, which was good to not go winless in the preseason. But like I said, again, I don't think you can really take too much from it. And I think Malone's kind of mixing and matching lineups as well, and he's going to try to get like a rotation before Thursday. So a lot of experimentation there just to see like who his guys are going to be. And Watson's also been out too. He hasn't played a game in the preseason, so he's going to be a big part of what they do. So another guy who hasn't really been in the mix.
Yeah, I also think Michael Malone is just a coach, and he's never going to be happy with what happens in preseason, just based on how much effort and energy is being given. But it's stuff that, with that effort and energy, hopefully we get up to that regular season floor, that threshold of focus and defense, rebounding, all those things. I also think the Abu Dhabi games were a little, as much as I think they handled it well and seemed to be confident with the extra work they were able to put in before traveling and not having anyone get hurt over there or not having any, mishaps of anything of that sort. I think that's all good, but at the same time, I'm sure if you ask him, if the NBA Adam Silver calls Michael Malone up and asks, "Hey, do you want to go to Abu Dhabi again next year?" He's not going to say yes. So the Celtics games were fun. It's a good matchup. We got some interesting highlights, but at the same time, I don't think it's the most productive basketball context, is what I'll say.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard that it was pretty close for 3 quarters, and then their bench just kind of cleaned up our bench. So they've got the depth on us, but we can play with them toe to toe starters wise.
Yeah, I would say that's true. And we didn't even get as much of the starters in those games as well, where I think Denver really has a potential advantages, those size mismatches and things like that. So I think I wouldn't be concerned about it I don't have any takeaways about that matchup specifically from that experience, especially because it is an overseas preseason game. But there's potential. I think we've seen a lot of different points of potential for the team. Um, I don't know. I mean, I have more I could elaborate on, but if you had any more questions.
Yeah, I got some more. So my next question is, how have you guys, just overall thoughts about Westbrook's fit so far? Do you think his teammates are responding well to him? Are there some specific players you've noticed the nice chemistry that he's clicked with? How is he learning Jokic? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think Westbrook and Strawler for sure have definitely established a pretty good connection off the bat. Just because I think Strawler's skill set really facilitates what Russ does well, which is generate rim pressure, get into the paint. Someone who's a big transition force as well, and I think Julian's going to be the hit. Mike said it on media day. I don't know if it was media day, but like a couple days ago, he was like, "Me and Julian are like the only volume 3-point shooters on the roster," which I don't know what that says about Jamal, but he did say that him and Julian were like the 3-point volume shooters on the squad. So yeah, no, I think Julian and Russ for sure have kind of hit it off on that aspect with the bench. But yeah, I mean, Russ has been hit or miss. I think in the preseason, he had a game the other night where he had like a lot of turnovers. He'll be like the first couple games in the Boston games in Abu Dhabi, he was just missing easy shots of the rim, which was like he got all the way to the rim, and it was like a great play too, but he just couldn't finish the layup. So
Mhm.
that was frustrating. And people that I've spoken with that were Clippers fans would say the same thing. Like that's what drove them crazy. Like he would get all the way into the paint, make a great move, and then just below the layup. So hopefully this time around that doesn't happen as much. But yeah, I'd say it's been a mixed bag for Russ, but I think more good than bad, honestly. And that's coming from a Russ skeptic as far as his playoff chances are concerned. But as far as the regular season goes, I think he'll be pretty big contributor, and I think his value is more of the intangibles he brings off the court. Kind of what Malone has said as well. A guy who's going to push Jamal to be the best he could be. He brought Trey Alexander into his press conference the other day to try to get him up to speed with some of the media training stuff, which I thought was pretty cool. Kind of just seems like a good teammate all around, and someone who's going to push Murray and the guys to be competitive. So I think that's, obviously the on-court stuff is something that's more important than the intangible things, but I do think intangible stuff aspects are important to what the Nuggets need moving forward, especially Murray, especially after the last couple of months that he's kind of endured. I think he kind of needs that push moving forward.
Yeah, I am also really happy. 10 out of 10 off court. The vibes, the way he talks to the other guys, the way he talks to the media, the insight he gives in interviews, these sorts of things, I'm really happy with. On the court, I have gone from a skeptic. Always been a skeptic of Russ. I think he's the reason he hasn't won a championship in a lot of the cases that he's been in. But I became a little bit more optimistic just being in Denver because I think it's a better setup for him that there are almost no other non-shooters on the floor. That's what I want to say, at least among the front court players. Even Zeke is shooting better. I know that might be a temporary thing, but we'll see. I mean, it's him, it's Aaron Gordon, maybe Peyton Watson, but all those players I think still are very valuable. So it's a good opportunity. And yet I do see some of CT talked about some of the smoked layups that reminded me of like Emmanuel Mudiay. But also there are some moments where I just feel like he's always putting in the energy, but not necessarily focused as much as I want him to be. And that might be preseason. I don't know yet.
Yeah, that one. I don't know if you saw it right where he just missed the box out off a free throw.
Mhm.
Christian was like, "What's going on here?" And then somebody just, I don't know who it was. I think it was Josh Minot, just came into the lane and just put the ball back up for an easy layup. But that was like a thing where it's just like a blatantly obvious, like brain kind of fog there that he just messed that up. I feel like
Yeah,
that
for
was the
some
plays that are
reason.
going to be questionable. Like just the obvious like plays that you think like a box out, a defensive rebound, things like that. I just think are going to be some of the obvious plays where we're all going to look and be like, how did this happen?
Right. And to fill in, for some reason, Christian Brown was, how your bigs usually take the low blocks on a free throw?
Yeah, Russ was in the low block.
Russ took the low block for some reason, and Christian took the high block for some reason, and Russ just doesn't box out. So it's preseason, but I think there is room. I see the room for error here. That's what I'll say.
So even though I didn't watch preseason, I have one take about Russ that I just want to remind everybody of. I think that once you have a narrative that's, sort of common about you as an NBA player, it's very hard to shake that. And I think with Russ, so many people have the Lakers tenure ingrained in their head that they think that that's like who he is now. And while I'm not saying he's still an all-star player, I think it's important to remember that Russell Westbrook is in Denver on a minimum contract to be the backup point guard. So even though he's, an all-time great future Hall of Famer and has done a lot and is past his prime, if he can just be a decent backup point guard, which is what he was last year for the Clippers, that's all we really need him to be. Because I just want fans to be consistent about this. Fans will trash guys who have max contracts and don't play up to par. But then if a guy's on a minimum, to me, it's like if he has a game where Russ might have games this year where he scores like 15, 20 points, maybe has like 10 and 12 assists. That's a huge bonus. I think, I'm going to preemptively give Calvin Booth credit for that because historically we don't really get these type of players. I mean, if you go back a couple of years, I think Jeff Green is the first guy that we got in the Jokic era. We're like, oh wow, we got like a key role player that's like kind of a big name. I'm not saying Jeff Green's a Hall of Fame or anything, but I think you guys know what I mean, right? It's like we usually get the leftovers. I don't know if we were competing with anybody's services for Russ, but it does still feel good to know that there are guys that want to play with Jokic, right? I mean, I think when you're at that level, like if you're a fringe, if you're like a mid-level to like lower salary player, you're still going to mostly go where the money is. But Russ has made his money. He is at the ring chasing portion of his career. And so when you guys talk about Ray, you said 10 out of 10 on the vibes leadership. That's great to hear, because I think I knew that a little bit about Russ, but it has been better than I've expected because it does seem like he's really embracing that role. I was honestly a little worried just about the fact that the last 3-4 years he's been in LA where he's from. He's playing at home, so even if things might have not been great at work, at least he's at home. Now he's moving to a city he's never lived in. It's just a little different, but it seems like he's still very motivated, very into extending his career as long as he can. Still seems like he's in elite shape, showing up to the gym early. And Malone loves him. So I think that is always the key. And then just one other small thing is, I think that when guys blow layups, it's definitely frustrating. But watching Westbrook, I've always sort of been able to forgive guys a little bit more when they're going as hard as they can. It's more like you get mad at guys when they are lazy, right? Because I mean, you can make mistakes going 100% or you can make mistakes going half-ass. But what is a coach more likely going to yell at you for, right? CT, it's like they're going to be mad if you weren't hustling for that loose ball. It doesn't seem like Westbrook has that problem. I mean, yeah, the box out was like a brain fart thing, but I think the fact that he's a backup player now, he understands that he can go a little harder, while he's in there, because I think even Malone was talking about his defense. So I'm excited for his minutes this year. It could be a nice spark. But yeah, let's move on. So my next question is, I just want to know everybody's excitement level for Julian Strawther. I mean, I don't think I've been this excited for a young Nuggets player since Michael Porter. He was excellent in summer league, even better than I thought he was going to be. And then I believe I saw a stat that he led the preseason in total points. So I think now it's kind of become a debate amongst Nuggets fans on should he start or not. And I'll leave that up to Malone, but I really do think that it's fine if Christian starts. You want good defense in the starting unit. You don't want Murray to have to guard the best guard on the other team. But I don't want to hurt Christian's confidence right now. I think you can have Julian come off the bench, give the team a spark. And then CT, I think you and me both said this on Twitter recently. We could see Strawther closing some games this year. So I'm really excited for him. Curious to hear you guys' thoughts.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind Strawther, especially, like you said, Peter, I put it on the timeline. Like Christian, of course, I think is the best option to start just because of his defensive capabilities.
Yeah.
I think he's more of a low mistake player than Peyton Watson at this juncture of his career. I just think he's had that championship experience already. I think that matters, contributing to a finals win. I think Christian's the best shooter out of him and Peyton as well. If we're going to, compare the two to start. Julian, I was very high on him in the draft, being taken for the Nuggets at that point 2 years ago. I do worry about his one-on-one defense, even though I know that's been a big kind of focus for him moving forward. And he's got the intangibles, right? He's 6'7", pretty big wingspan, fairly athletic. Only problem is he's got a pretty slight frame, so he's just gonna be bodied by a lot of more of the quicker and more physical guards, and that's why I think Christian is probably the best option to start there. And also, too, I don't like Christian's fit with the bench either, next to Russ and Peyton and whoever else they decide to put at the 4, whether it's Flacco or Zeke or Hunter Tyson. But I don't think he'll play the 4 because I just think he's too undersized. But I think Christian defensively, the Nuggets just going to need his point of attack defense. Just if you look at all the guards in the West, Steph, and I know historically he hasn't really guarded Steph that well, but if you look at Steph and you look at Ant and you look at Shea, right? You look at all these guys that the Nuggets need to not stop per se, but at least dampen their impact in order for the Nuggets to, put up a fight defensively. So, yeah, I mean, I'm in favor of Christian starting, but I think honestly, matchup dependent wise, I wouldn't be opposed to Peyton getting more minutes of the 2-1 game, or Julian if the Nuggets need offense and they need to really outgun teams, right? Just have Julian out there and play him at the 2 next to the core 4. Like I think there's optionality in the sense that the Nuggets could use any one of those guys depending on the matchup.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I do feel like, Christian, his skill set fits what the starters need more than Strawther, and Strawther kind of fits what the bench needs more than Christian does. It'd be a really poorly spaced bench if Christian was coming off the bench, to be honest. And small sidebar, Fives, I know you mentioned Paul Millsap as like a free agent acquisition. I think Peter is talking more about like end of bench role player tier guys a little bit more than stars. But
yeah, nobody else was giving Millsap $30 million.
Yeah, that's fair. But with Strawther, I I'm excited for him though, because he seems to have this potential as an offensive engine, which is not super common on the Denver Nuggets. And I guess the thing that it's kind of been a question for me the whole time is like defensively, he's really good with his verticality and he's very comfortable in like weak side rim protection and things like that. But the foot speed, I don't know if it's there. I do think he needs, I don't want to say needs, but ideally you pair him with a player that's a little bit better of a defender than him, and that provides some balance. Good guy though. I'm hyped.
Yeah. Next guy I want to talk about is Michael Porter Jr. I've heard the L word from some people. I'm just curious to see from you guys what's been different about his game. Like how has he impressed people in ways that maybe we haven't seen before?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Mike is, I think you're going to see majority a lot of the same from him that we've seen over the past couple of years, but I do think it does change the calculus a bit for Mike. If he's what we saw in preseason, at least, was a lot of increased physicality from him. He put on some weight, which is pretty noticeable in my opinion. Him playing the four, I think that's going to be a pretty big difference. That he's playing up in weight. He's been able to attack closeouts a lot more decisively. Getting to the rim, using his physicality, using his height and length, and also he's keeping his dribble alive more, which is something that he didn't used to do. Like I don't know if you remember, like if him and Jokic run 2-man game, right, and Mike doesn't have anything, he'll just pitch it back to Jokic and he'll just like reset the offense, and he'll kind of like I used to get kind of mad about that because it would just stall out the offense. Now he's taking it upon himself to get to the rim fully, make or miss, and I think that's a good thing. Let him take some more shots, be more aggressive in that aspect. So. And I think his handle's a bit better as well. Obviously it's not going to be a great handle just due to the back complications and his height. But it does look better. He had a nice pick and roll split the other day, which is pretty cool. But it's just like the willingness and just being more aggressive to fire from, shots at the rim, which is something that's been great to see. Would rather him do that as well as, obviously be a very, impactful volume perimeter shooter, because the Nuggets just need the shooting, considering the roster constraints right now. But I think if he's able to mix it up a bit more, I think we're going to see a more well-rounded Mike. And especially that's something they need going to the playoffs, because like we saw against the Wolves, it kind of took him out of the series just by putting McDaniels on him and sticking him in the corner. If Mike could use that physicality now and get downhill, and he kind of put that floater in his game last year a bit, but he was able to finish consistently more at the rim. I think that'll be an added bonus to the Nuggets offense, not only to the Nuggets offense, but to his kind of output as well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the way I would put it is that he feels so much more dynamic than he's ever felt. I mean, he's always been talented. The shot's always been a threat. The height's always been a threat. But it feels like he's connected all of those things together, and that he can read a situation and react to it appropriately, and is making confident decisions. And I think that's not just really good for the team, but I think it's going to create an interesting opportunity for Denver to have better lineups. I'm higher on the Nuggets than I've ever been on the non-Jokic lineups, for a variety of reasons and players, from Russ to some of the other front court players off the bench, but also that Michael Porter is a lot more flexible in what he can do on a basketball court. And at least that's how he looks. I think you could pair him. I really like him with Aaron Gordon. Like there was a couple of there's a game where Jokic sat, Russ sat, Jamal sat, and Michael Porter and Aaron Gordon kind of take on this role of leading the team and leading the units, that whatever they were in. And I thought they did a great job of, obviously it reminded me so much of like Gallinari and Chandler from back in the day, if you remember, in the way that they would, maybe neither of them have the most amazing handle or is the best post player or 3-point shooter or passer or whatever it might be. But because you have the two of them together, they can kind of pick apart whoever they're matched up with by selecting, who's smaller than the AG, who can't keep up with Mike, who can't challenge Mike's shot, who can't challenge Mike even playing the short corner. which he did a little bit in the preseason and is really effective at. So I'm pretty high on just that tandem and Michael Porter in particular. Maybe he could be an all-star. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that is an underrated thing about our forwards that a lot of people forget is that they're both so good that almost every single night, at least one of them has a matchup problem, right? Because if you want to put the size on AG to take away the easy stuff, Mike's going to have a mismatch. And if you want to put your best forward defender on MPJ to stop the threes, then AG's probably going to feast. I really do think that was like sort of an under-discussed plot that like the Wolves really had going for them is that they're just as big, if not bigger, in the front court than the Nuggets. Maybe the only team in the league. I mean, yeah, I know people talked about they were built to beat Denver, but I feel like people always talked about that from the perspective of, oh, Towns can guard Jokic with Gobert on the backside. That's part of it. The other part was, yeah, MPJ couldn't get off in that series. And then also, as soon as Finch lined up Gobert's minutes with Gordon, Gordon couldn't really go off either. Now, of course, Minnesota has traded Towns for Randall, who's a completely different player. He's not bad. He's just different. So that matchup is going to be different now. And I think most Nuggets fans we sort of rejoiced when that trade happened because it doesn't mean Minnesota's going to be bad now, but that's the team that beat us last year. They barely beat us. And, I just kind of like the matchups against Minnesota more and the other teams in the West. So I think if he stays healthy and he gets opportunities, no reason Mike can't have a big year.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really excited for it. As I've said on the show before, I think he's the second most talented Nugget. No disrespect to anybody else. But yeah. And did you have, I mean, we can kind of move on to the other players if you wanted to talk about them, or I could talk about Michael Porter and how awesome he is for 5 minutes.
We can move on. I was going to say, what have you guys seen from Dario Saric? Has there been anything about his game maybe that you didn't know or that surprised you?
I would say more of the same, honestly, from what I kind of thought. He hasn't really shot as many threes as I kind of would have liked him to. I think that's kind of just been more of just Russ assuming more usage compared to Dario being more of a hub, which I would like to see a little bit more of, actually, just giving him the ball, making him make decisions, playing the two-man game with Julian, who, Julian obviously had a great preseason, but kind of like what I expected. I don't know. He's kind of moving a little more slower. I don't know if you guys seen it as well, like a little more slower than I thought he'd be. Could just be him ramping up into shape, which is possible, but I don't like the lineups with him and Jokic together. I just think defensively it's too challenged of a lineup. I kind of just hope that Dario just plays the backup five and that's kind of his role, just being like a Jokic substitute. So, but no, more of the same, I'd say. Nothing really too different. But I think it's good that they have a guy who you could play effectively, kind of a little bit like Jokic. He's a good passer, good post up guy as well. Like he can punish mismatches, which Jokic is obviously the king of punishing those. So I think that's like you can kind of translate that from the two units. So more of the same for Dario. I think Julian obviously has been the big bench piece that's really stood out so far. But yeah, they're going to need Dario to have a pretty big year in order for the bench to stay afloat.
As you both know, I recently turned 30, and I am not surprised at how slow Saric is moving.
Welcome to the club, baby.
But at the same time, I was listening to like Matt Moore and Swipa. They both had a conversation about this, I think, a few days ago. And if you're just talking about offensively, can they figure it out? Dario playing with Jokic, that sort of thing. I think they can. They're both very smart players. They have that connection. Is it perfect spacing? No, but I think they're both capable enough to work that out. It really is defensively that it would become a question mark for me unless it was a special circumstance. Maybe you're playing against another team that also is playing that sort of double big lineup and it's a look you want to go to respond. I can see that. But that said, that's not necessarily an indictment on him. You have two centers and you have 2 point guards, and I honestly don't need to see them play together all that much. But outside of that, I mean, I'm really optimistic about his fit on the team. I know a lot of people see the Nuggets roster as depleted, and are we cooked? And are the is the window over? And I don't feel that way at all. I actually feel like the addition of Vlatko and Charge, not that Vlatko is new, but him being back from injury and with Zeke, who we'll talk about them together, I think they provide a lot more as a backup group than Zeke could have ever provided alone last year. So I'm really high on him. I think he is going to do well in like the Jeff Green kind of role where he's like CT said, exploiting a lot of mismatches, um, being under control with the ball, preventing turnovers, really, and kind of letting other guys around him shine in the ways that are best for them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always happy to add guys that have good IQ because their play might not always stand out, but if they can just be a good connector piece, the way Vlatko was when he was healthy, that's a big plus. So yeah, leading into Zeke and Vlatko, I've heard that Zeke is playing with more confidence, hitting some shots, and Ray, dare I say, even setting some solid screens. Word on the street, is that true?
I'm very picky about screen setting. I'm not going to say he's that much better at screen setting, but the shooting I do feel like is much better with him. And it's one of those things that for a lot of basketball players, reforming your shot just takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. Usually not comfortable with it for a long time. You're going to want to revert back to what you're most comfortable with. And sometimes that push and pull of I know this is what I want to do, but I know this is what my body is telling me that, oh, this is what we're used to doing, that can almost make you a worse shooter. Yeah, I'm with Grace here. I don't think he's improved really, honestly, in any of the things that I've always said he was bad at. Screen setting. I don't think he has good hands. I don't think he's a good post player. I don't think he's a good defensive
Passing.
rebounder. I don't think he's a great passer.
Whoa.
He's not a vertical threat. But
Basically
like I've
everything
always
at
said,
basketball.
if you can do this one thing, is stand in the corner, stand on the wing, and just shoot threes when you're open, you're playable. As a four who can play defense and be switchable and provide energy, that's totally fine. And honestly, he can be a really valuable, not a really valuable player, but he can be a player who I think is better than even what his contract is. Like that $8 million might look good if we find all of a sudden he's a consistent 3-point shooter and just a good defender when you need him. So,
Yeah, I mean, yep. What I'll say about the Zeke stuff, I mean, a lot of people I saw on the timeline were pretty excited about Zeke's preseason performances, which he wasn't bad, I would say, overall. I'd probably say the one game that stood out was the OKC game where he was hitting a couple threes. Defensively, like I will say, like he is the most switchable big they have off the bench. Watson, I don't consider a big; he's a wing.
No.
But as they're big, he could switch at least on some matchups. I won't say most, but he held his own against Jay like a couple times, which was pretty impressive. Like him against Chet, he was able to kind of body him and move him off his spot a bit. But my thing with Zeke and the Vlatko discussion is, I know a lot of people get mad with my Vlatko praise that I just think he's a valuable player for this team. It's more so like the lineup construction is why I wouldn't play Zeke with the bench. Like I just am not a fan of Russell Westbrook, Peyton Watson, Zeke spacing. I just don't think that's going to work. And again, if Zeke's jump shot is actually truly changed and transformed and he's shooting 35-ish%, then maybe I could say combining him and Watson's defense with Russ at the point of attack, when he's engaged, could make for an interesting kind of bench lineup. But for me, with the Vlatko discussion, is that I just think Vlatko is a more offensively useful player. He's a good connector. He could pass the ball. Him and Julian had a pretty good chemistry in the two-man game the other night in that Minnesota game. It's just like I think Vlaco and Dario and Russ to an extent could all set up good looks for Julian, which I think should just be the mantra for the bench. Just try to get Julian going as much as possible, and then flank it with Dario and Russ doing what they do. Um, but I just think with Vlaco is he's the best shooter out of Zeke and himself. Good connector, good passer, and I think he's more so of a wing player than a big. So I think that'll be helpful as far as like if the Nuggets need to go more 5-out, you could play Vlaco next to Mike. You could play Vlaco next to AG if you want as well. Like we can see some of those combinations. You could play Vlaco next to Peyton Watson. I think that's a great combination. Watson, Vlaco, and Dario. I think that's a really versatile bench mix. Good shooting. Watson obviously is the defensive ace in that lineup, but I just think Vlaco brings more to the table as far as being more offensively useful and the guy who's a connector who's going to help facilitate lineups rather than kind of just bring one defensive ability to the table.
So
I do think that's fair. The only other thing I would say about it is I watching the Šarić, Vlatko, Hunter Tyson minutes.
Oh man,
that unit got out there in the preseason.
brutality.
The defense, the rebounding, it was not there. Like without Watson, what I like about I don't even necessarily think you would play. I don't even know if I want to say one guy is ahead of the other. It's more like these are ingredients in a recipe.
Right.
They're different
That's a good way to
kinds
put
of
it.
spices.
I
and
mean,
you've gotta
speaking
use them.
speaking of ingredients, I don't know if you can go with the all male front court in 2024.
Fair.
The thing with Tyson is I actually think he's shorter than he's projected as. Like he's kind of said to be like 6'8". He does not look 6'8" to me. He looks more like 6'5"-ish, 6'6". Like Julian is basically taller than him, I think, which is
He's got more hair.
That's true, but he can't be playing the 4 if he's 6'6". Like that's
Right.
just not something that. And again, you're not going to play Tyson over Watson. That's just not going to happen. So it's like I don't think you can play, and especially we don't want Watson playing the 4 again like last year. Peyton today, I don't know if you watched his press conference where he kind of came back, as a full practice guy today. He said he wants to play more of the wing, which is understandable. That's where his skill set is best suited as. So I just think Vlaco makes optimal sense fitting in between Peyton and Dario, and then also too you can stagger him with the starters as well. You can play him next to Mike. You can play him next with CB. You can play him with AG. And he's another shooter out there for Jokic to kind of hit, if you need, if the two-man game is being overwhelmed. So that's just my opinion on it. We'll see if he plays Thursday or not. I don't know if Malone's going to go 10-man rotation or 10-man and play Mike there, which would be something I'd also advocate for as well. If you want to play Mike with the 4 other bench guys, that's fine with me. And if you want to go a 9-player rotation, but I just think considering the health and the preservation of the guys, you'd probably want to go 10 for the time being.
Can I give you a hypothetical?
Sure.
So say you're playing the Timberwolves. I think this is a good example. And you're dealing with that kind of like 3-headed monster with Randall off the bench. Is Randall a great player? Not necessarily. But would he cook Dario and Vlaco? He probably would. That might be a situation where you put out Zeke, where you're like, okay, there's a guy, they're staggering him. He's kind of killing us. We need somebody who's a little bit more sturdy. And that might be 1 in 4, 1 in 5 games, something like that. But all that said, I'm happy for him. And like, I am in full agreement with the Zeke redemption arc, also for the sake of my own stock values, just as CT, we might share the stock leaders in Vlaco stock, but I think I'm like the number 1 Zeke guy on Nuggets on the Nugget space right now. So the portfolio is up. Okay, the stock we're at 2 pennies last week, and now we're at $1. So
Jesus.
I'm feeling it.
And I think too, it'd be beneficial if Zeke played well, just because then you can look to trade him.
It's not unmovable, at least.
Right. I think that's also an option.
CT, that's actually what I was going to say is I don't disagree with anything you said basketball-wise on the court, but I think when you factor in basketball politics and you look at Zeke's contract, it behooves the Nuggets to try to make this work, right? So I don't know what their level of confidence in Vlatko is right now. Maybe they know better than we do. They see him in practice. So maybe he is like fine behind closed doors and a secret weapon, but I do think that Malone is going to try his best to get Zeke to work out because Vlatko's on such a good contract that, if he's not good, it doesn't really hurt you, and he's easy to move if you need to. Zeke is so much more difficult to move that it behooves them to really just try to show that he's a valuable player so they can either move him later or use them because then Vlatko either becomes a valuable trade chip or they can just, play him later in the season if they can't move Zeke and they just need to trust somebody. So I get all your basketball reasons. I'm with you, but I do think Zeke brings some skills that can help. So I'm hopefully they can both be you know, good, decent bench players when called upon and needed this season.
Well, who is he healthy? I think is a big question. Also,
Yeah.
if I'm being honest, most of the preseason, Vlatko did not have a great. Yeah, I would say it was not great, but I would say not great is better than I would say he was bad over the summer. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's progress for him, and he had the last game of the preseason was really good for him. So for both of them, it's kind of a question mark for me where I'm like, okay, Vlaco, how healthy are you? Are you getting back? Are you going to be that consistent player I know you can be, that we know he can be? And Zeke, is your shot real? Which I want to say it is, just aesthetically. I'm looking at it, I'm evaluating the form. It looks consistent, it
It
looks
looks better.
smooth. It looks like the opposite of whatever Call Bridges did to his shot. Like, I don't know,
Yes.
his somehow got worse in a way that's weird. Like, I don't understand it. I feel bad. Because I want the Knicks to do well, but yeah. So I feel like they almost who's ahead of who. For me, it's still up in the air a little bit.
I just want to add one small thing that I can relate to a little bit is Vlaco's coming off an ACL injury. I think even if his knee is fully back healthy again, it takes a while to fully get your confidence back. Like his shooting's probably okay, but his pump and drive game, there's just certain things that you might not be 100% sure about doing, full bore when you're coming off a knee injury. And as you guys know, those split second decisions, hesitating here or there can make all the difference in scoring on a player not in basketball. So I think let's give him half the season just to sort of warm up and get his legs under him and see how he does. And at least his IQ will be there. So I think let's not have too high expectations for Vlatko in the first half of the year. But I think as he gets his legs under him, I think he can be a profitable player down the stretch.
Good news, everyone! The bar is in hell. Like, I mean, the bench was so bad and has been so bad that I think the fact that we have positive takeaways about each player, that Flacco, Zeke, Sharch, and those are all non-Jokic players, like non-starters, like that makes me feel so much better than
Right.
even I understand losing Deron Holmes is big, but I'm way more optimistic that like they've got a lot of flexibility here. Even, none of us want Peyton to play the 4, but he could do it if we had to. Um, DJ could play once a month, one DJ can have a good game once a month. That's all I'm saying. So I feel pretty good, even though the rust variability is there between him, Strother, Watson, all these guys. I feel like this could be the best bench since Plumlee and Monte Morris. That's how I
Ooh.
feel.
I'd agree with that. Yeah. Maybe Bruce was the best bench player that we had.
But they were bad.
Yeah, that bench configuration wasn't overall good.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably accurate. Yeah.
All right, guys. About 45 minutes in, we've waited long enough. Let's give the people what they want. Aaron Gordon signs an extension today. Give me the details. Give me your thoughts, fellas.
CT, do you want to start?
Yeah, so I think it was a 4-year, $133 million deal. I think it was front loaded as well, where he's taking the player option for his $23 million, I think, right now. So I think honestly he's giving up. I'd have to double check, but he's giving up $17 million, I think, on the back end.
Okay.
So I think this was a pretty flexible deal that he was able to kind of give back a bit of money. But I think he was well compensated for getting the max money that he could get on the back end. So kind of a little bit of flexibility he gave Denver, but um, overall a deal that I think was necessary. I think the Nuggets had to re-sign him to that extension. They need his skill set, um, and again, good to kind of have Gordon in Denver for the next 4 years or so. And Nuggets are actually million below the second apron next season. So if they're able to move off of the Zeke deal, if they're able to move off of any of the minimum guys as well, I think that'll even add some more additional flexibility as well. So I think the Nuggets are in a pretty good spot as far as their cap sheet's concerned. I think probably Peyton and CB are extension eligible pretty soon as well. That's probably coming up down the line. I don't know what they end up doing with that, but that's kind of something also to monitor. But yeah, no, I think overall just keeping Gordon was a pivotal move for them, and good to keep the core four in Denver for at least the next 3 years because Mike's deal is up in 3 years. He's got this year, next year, and then he's expiring the year after. So all four of them are in Denver for the next 3 years. Which again, if you have those four guys, I think you're a contender. So good to have.
Don't take this the wrong way. Jamal, buy that man a watch because I feel like I've been thinking about this the whole time. Is like, who's going to sacrifice here? Somebody has to if you want to keep the core together. And Aaron Gordon was willing to do it, and I really appreciate him for that. I think everybody on the team should appreciate him for that. We as fans should appreciate him for that. And I can't say how much. Um, I'm surprised. I'm surprised, but also overjoyed. That's all I can say. Is like this is a great day to be a Nuggets fan.
Absolutely.
I agree.
I think there was like a little bit of doubt in my mind that he might not be back, mostly because of the way the last two off seasons are gone. But obviously, I think the Nuggets made the right calculation in determining that Aaron Gordon is much more important than KCP or Bruce Brown. So, I think the number one thing when you have a team in contention is to make sure your superstar is happy. And if Aaron Gordon wasn't on the Nuggets next year, I don't think Nikola Jokic would be too happy with that. So now everybody's got a good, fresh peace of mind. The core is locked up for at least 3 years, as you said, with Mike. Jamal just signed his new deal. And so, yeah, I think we're starting the season healthy. We're excited. We got some young guys that we need to see a lot from. But overall, I think it's in a healthy spot. And it is kind of interesting how the national media has sort of moved on from the Nuggets. I mean, I get losing a starter from a championship level team hurts, but I did think it was absolutely hilarious how KCP was not in the ESPN 100 last year, scores like 11 points a game, and now he's like 62nd. So I love KCP. I'm not trying to diss the guy, but it's just like there is like a weird Nuggets slander like outside of Denver.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. I
Right.
mean, it is what it is. I if anything, to me, they earned it by going out sad in the playoffs. Honestly, I think people
Sure.
extrapolate a lot from people will take a moment like that and extrapolate a bunch of things from it. And I think that's just going to be what it is until they reset that narrative. So, um, people will hate.
Fair.
Yeah, I mean, I think the back end of that deal might not be as great as we may want, just because of AG's game potentially being in decline at that point. But it's about the now. You have to maximize the Jokic window now, and AG gives the Nuggets the best chance to win a ring. So it's a deal that was necessary. I personally would like to keep all four of those guys in Denver for the long term, which 3 more years is still pretty good. I think that's still pretty good window there. Um, but yeah, I mean, I just think Gordon was too important to pass up. As far as that extension is concerned. So I'm happy about it. I'm happy that it was also too like before the season that it kind of put that to rest instead of going into the midseason as a free agent. Toward the end of the year. So I think that's also a pretty good sweat off everybody's back. And I think Thursday should be exciting. I think everybody should be excited about it. It should be a fun game and good to have the core four locked in.
I'm hoping we get to see more of him in I think Denver leaned into him more in his bag as a ball handler and a distributor last year, bringing up the ball more, initiating offense more. And that's for me, talking about his game being something predicated on athleticism. If he can continue to find himself and his old man game and continue to find ways to be a productive player, I think that will also be big in maybe you can't count on him to be the defensive anchor, rebounding anchor, lob threat, on the back end of that contract. But maybe by the end of that contract, he's like a decent ball handler, not decent. He's already decent ball handler. He's more than decent, but someone you trust in that role, someone who finds his shot more consistently. Or maybe he's movable. He's probably still movable either way. So I'm not super worried, but I think that is a valid thing to think about. So
I agree.
All valid points, I think, for sure.
we haven't talked about Watson, but he hasn't played.
Right.
I'm not out on Hunter Tyson. I am out on
I am.
Pickett.
I am.
Yeah.
I'm Pickett for sure. I think that's a given that he's just. I mean, the thing is too. I tweeted the other day that I think it's pretty telling that Malone's already this early on has played two of the two-way guys over him. Considering he's a rostered guy, Gillespie got more minutes last year than Pickett, which I think was the right move. I think Gillespie was a better player than him, and that's Malone's job. He's got to play who's the better player, regardless of contract. In some instances, but when it's that instance, when it's like a margin move, that's kind of how it goes. And personally, I think Trey is a better player than Pickett as well. I just think he brings more to the table as far as a shot creator, better defender than Pickett too. So I think that's kind of telling that he, didn't get any minutes in the preseason, especially that last game. I think he had the DMP. He actually got the DMP, which was not great. But yeah, and Tyson as well. I think Tyson's probably. I'm not completely out on him. I don't think he's an NBA rotation player on like a championship team, but he probably could give you spot minutes every 10th game or so if you really want. It's like a shooter type guy against
Mike Miller.
team.
You remember when Mike Miller was on the Nuggets? He could be
like latter stage Mike Miller, yeah.
Yeah, or like I'm so dubious prospects as a defender, but at least he has an NBA skill that you can be like, okay, you can do this thing, right? And I know, has he done it a lot yet? But 48 minutes into his career, I'm not super worried about his shot variance. Whereas Jalen Pickett, I think he needs. I don't mean this in a derogatory way. I think he should go to Europe, not because he's totally untalented. I just think he needs time in a professional environment against professional players to build that. He needs a body of work. He can convince people that justifies his unorthodox play style. And he needs to build the strength to do that at the NBA level. Like there are unorthodox point guards out there. I'm not saying they can't work. It's just, I don't think there's ever going to be space. Whereas like Hunter Tyson, he might be the third or fourth best shooter on the team. There might be a time where, okay, you need to throw him out there for a few minutes. There's no point at which you can spend the immediate payoff isn't going to be there, and the long-term payoff you don't have time for. So Yeah, you could cut him today, honestly, and
Ray,
I'd be fine.
I have
They
to
should have signed
disagree with you
Lonnie.
there.
I think that's what it was. They should have signed Lonnie, I think, over
Ray,
Pickett.
I
I think it sounds to me like you're saying that he needs to refine his game. I think he needs to completely throw out the way he plays if he wants to be an NBA player, because what he does is he kills the clock, he backs people down, and then he doesn't get the ball moving. And now there's like 7 seconds left on the shot clock. Like, going to Europe isn't going to like make that style any better. So his style will not work in the NBA. I think that we have proof of concept.
Yeah, I think that's the bottom line. Is he's just not an NBA. Again, could he play on like a Wizards team as like a backup? Possibly,
Wizard
but
slander.
Nah, that's Bones' job. Come on.
yeah, but I just don't think. I mean, and this is also the predicament we could kind of get in with Pickett with Booth as well by signing those two guys to guaranteed roster deals for multiple years. But it is what it is at this point.
Jalen Pickett would
Well,
be an elite point guard if you're trying to play capture
let
the
me
flag.
You should go to the
let me
Nets.
put it this way. Like, I'm talking like 10 years overseas, and then you come back and you can finish your career in the NBA. I don't want to make it seem like, oh, just a year of seasoning. No, I get what you're saying. Like, he's not. I think he needs, even the way if the way he plays is going to work in any context, he needs an adult body for
You
starters.
basically just told this man to go get a PhD before he can work in his field.
He needs a PhD in the weight room. Like,
He's not skinny.
There's
He's
some-
just small.
he's not strong enough to play the way he plays, and he's not quick enough
Agreed.
or explosive enough to play any other way.
100%.
So you got to fix one of those problems.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So
That's fair.
I don't know why
Um,
we talked this long about Pickett, but all right.
CT, I have a
Is this-
question.
Sure.
I don't know enough about the two-way contracts. So if Trey doesn't get converted all year, do the Nuggets have like bird rights? Can they sign him to a regular deal next year, or how does that work?
They can. Yeah, they could sign him to a regular deal next year, but he won't be eligible for the playoffs though if he is on the two-way
Right.
this year, which is
Right.
That
So
might
if
be a
they don't,
problem, we're
yeah,
low
if they
point
don't
guard
convert
depth.
him, he can't play in the playoffs. If they do convert him, it like moves up his clock a year, though, right? From like restricted free agency.
Probably, I would have to double check, but I do think that would be the case. Yeah. And again,
Okay.
with the kind of financial constraints we're in right now,
Yeah.
this AG deal just is going in effects. I don't believe that they would cut Pickett. They're gonna have to dump him. I mean, he's got one more year after this, so he might just play.
Yeah,
it out
I
and
don't.
be like, this is the last one.
I think they would cut him as their last resort. But in regards to Trey, unless he just plays so well that it forces their hand, I don't see them converting him this year, because that would also cost more money, right? I mean, a two-way is less. So if they convert him, that would add to the cap.
Yeah, but I think they could probably sign him to a lesser money deal. There was something with Holmes getting injured that you could sign someone like that to a deal.
Oh.
I'd have to double
Exception.
check.
They got an injury.
There was an exception. There was an
Okay.
injury exception where they could
It's
sign
very
him
small.
to that. It's a very small deal, but it is definitely more than the two-way deal. So I'm not sure if his agent would be in favor of him taking that deal.
Right.
But it's possible to be on the playoff roster. I mean, it's definitely a possibility.
I'd be open to it, because like there's a risk with the Russ situation that he isn't very good for some reason, and
100%,
you need another point guard. And as much as
He's also
like
old.
Lonnie,
He might get hurt.
that too, you
And
can't
Jamal's injury
assume
history as well.
perfect health among that duo. That would be risky. So Lonnie is good. I mean, to the extent that he is good, I don't know how good he is. He seems to be repeatedly getting cut, but at the same time, mainly it's not he's not a point guard. Like, if they're going to sign another player, I'd like them to be a point guard.
Like
that's
a Dennis
I just
Smith.
hope it's not Micic.
Whoever,
No. You'd have to trade for
At-
Micic, but the Nuggets aren't going to
at
do that.
least a point guard. Like, you don't need another 2 through 4. You don't need another big, really.
That's why I wanted Dennis Smith. I mean, he's a free agent, and again, he's not a guy who's a shooter or anything like that, but he is a competent veteran point guard at this juncture of his career.
That's
Or like-
wild to me that he's not signed.
or
Yeah.
if you kick the tires on Markel Fultz, I'd understand it. Whether or not I
Yeah.
agree with it, I would understand it.
Right.
Uh,
He's another veteran guy who could add to the mix.
That one is really bizarre to me.
I don't know what his deal is. Like, I don't know what what's up with his whole situation. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
get
I
it.
mean, just
But who
enough
knows?
to do a shot.
Maybe Booth had something up his sleeve and he's like waiting for the buyout market or something. Who knows? He
Possibly.
already hinted at like making a trade if there's not enough 3-point shooting or something. So we'll see.
That is something we could see. I think they have some trade flexibility, honestly. Like
What
maybe
is your
Zeke's
guys'
shooting
take on
well.
that? That seems like a big narrative of this camp is that the Nuggets just don't shoot enough threes.
Yeah, I mean, the Nuggets are always a team that's especially in the Jokic era, especially lately, have been a team that just bludgeons teams in the paint, just because Jokic is a guy who likes to operate inside out.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, Jokic, in order for the Nuggets to win this year, Jokic is going to have to rediscover his three ball. He can't shoot again like he did in the playoffs where it was that bad.
Right.
He's going to have to rediscover that. But yeah, I mean, the Nugget, there's been a lot of sense about the math game and whatever. Mike and Julian and Jamal are just going to have to shoot a lot of the threes, which is fine to me. I mean, because those are our best shooters, which is okay. But again, like a guy like Christian is going to have to shoot well. A guy like Peyton is going to have to hit his shots, and Russ actually had a pretty good preseason shooting the ball. I mean, do I buy that's going to be a consistent theme for him? No, but as a catch and shoot guy, I actually think he's better than what he's given credit for. So, yeah, I mean, I would like for them to get up more threes, but their strength is more on the interior, anyways.
Right.
There is like a disconnect for me with the Russ charge connection in the sense that a lot of the actions that they run, it feels like would lend themselves to a guard who can hit mid-range pull-ups,
Right,
but I don't want him shooting. And he hasn't shot a lot of mid-range pull-ups, to
which is
his
good.
credit. I just don't
Yeah,
want him shooting that. So I don't know how they figure out, maybe you invert those pick and rolls or something. But yeah, I'm actually okay with like catch and shoot threes. If you're open, put it up. It's fine.
yeah,
Um, it's just cutting out the middies and keeping them cut out. As long as he does that, I'll tolerate whatever happens. But I would love to see Jamal shoot more. I think like CT was on the money with
yeah,
that. Is like you just need your shooters to take a higher, be more aggressive.
yeah. Mike's going to
Especially,
shoot
I
a
think
lot.
Mike is going to shoot a lot. He didn't a lot. He didn't in preseason, but I think he's finding the balance. I think a lot of people know him as a 3-point shooter already, so he's getting overplayed in that way, especially on a team where he really is the. If you're getting the scouting report on the Denver Nuggets and who do you need to close out on, Michael Porter is number one on that list. But with Jamal, I think there's just a lot of room for him, being that he is that ball handler. He gets people go under screens too often. You know,
Yeah.
what's the difference between him and a Damian Lillard and some of these other guards? Is like it's hand down, man down with them. And I think maybe Jamal can't always be the healthiest. Maybe he can't always be the most explosive, but he can be more aggressive from three. I believe that.
Yeah.
Jokic shoot
Yeah,
better.
and they're gonna have to hit shots. That's the bottom
Yeah.
line. Is those guys are gonna have to be the floor spacers. And like I said with Jokic, he's gonna have to rediscover his three ball. That just makes him the most dangerous he could be. And if not, then Nuggets are kind of more guardable and defendable like last year. So
Yeah. I want to ask you guys this question. So Fives is talking about, not wanting Vasa Micic. Is there a veteran point guard acquisition that you would want in like a break glass situation that you can think of? I mean, CT, I know you mentioned Dennis Smith.
yeah, he'd probably be like the third string guy. Nuggets just need like an Ish Smith type. Like a guy who can get you through a couple games in the regular season, and if you need to, play him in the playoffs, like he wouldn't tank the lineup. And the Nuggets just kind of have two of those guys right now. And Trey's going to play this year. Like he's going to play minutes because Murray's going to either rest or he's going to be out for injury. Same with Russ, right? So Trey is going to play. Just a matter of how many games he kind of gets in there. But Yeah, I mean, I would hopefully would like another backup point guard that's a veteran, but probably Dennis Smith or I would have taken Lonnie as well, just as a combo guard. You kind of play him with Jokic in some ways that would mitigate the point guard issues. But it's just more so of like having a veteran guy than compared to less experienced, point
Someone
guard.
unproven. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, for me, there's no one there's no one who like comes to mind as, oh, this guy is available and you want him on your team. Like there's a lot of the Vasa Micics of the world. Not to say that, he's a bad guy or anything. It's just he was a lot more shot hungry than I expected from how well relative to how well he shot. He shot well in the Olympics, especially in that last game against Team USA, but not the last game obviously, but that second to last game. But Trey is fine. I think Trey is the natural band-aid there if need be.
I think you got to look at the teams that are not contending this year, because most of those guys on those rosters are going to be available. I don't know the math off the top of my head if it works, but Dennis Schroeder from Brooklyn has been a guy that's been good in the playoffs before. If you're trying to acquire him, that probably means things with Russ went south. I believe Devontae Graham just got cut because he was traded. So, I think he's a better point guard than Lonnie Walker. He's not quite the same defender, but he can at least come in
Shooter,
and run
yeah.
offense and hit a shot. But his game is very similar to Trey Alexander. So I think I might just rather convert Trey than bring him in. But yeah, and not any other names really come to the top of my head.
It's possible that if push comes to shove, you just kind of move Strother in there, and maybe you do bring in a Lonnie Walker, but it's like to play off guard, and maybe it's not perfect, but at least Trey is like if you're going to tell me, if you're going to tell me play Strother at point or sign, insert random available or trade for Dennis Schroeder, I'm okay.
I think if Strother's going to play point, it could probably only be with Jokic. I don't know if
Yeah,
you'd want
that's right.
Strother leading a unit. You'd probably have to do the stagger Murray and Jokic thing to always have one of them on the court.
It depends. I'd have to see how the charge connection, how that works out long term. But
Okay.
yes, that's very possible. Like maybe
Yeah.
charge can fill in that way, but
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from. Or like I said, Mike AG stagger. They can do a lot of the like leadership aspects. I'm cool with that too.
Right.
But I feel like we've covered pretty much every nugget except not Jamal. Jamal, he had a good game in the preseason. We don't have to spend too much time on this. I don't think there's a lot to really draw a conclusion necessarily for. He had a good game in the preseason, which was nice to see. You kind of wanted to see one. And we hope he plays well and plays a lot of games. That's my hope anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the takeaway for that. I mean, Murray, when he's healthy, I think you can count on him in the regular season being pretty good. Just all about the health, though. That's it. And especially with the new deal kicking in now, he's going to have to be a guy who's going to have to play a lot of games because they're going to need him. So
There's a set of expectations that comes with the money,
absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. So I just hope how does he start?
Yeah, that's the question.
Maybe we
It's
can
always a
do
slow one.
this. What is the what would you guys say is a good over under for Jamal Murray points per game in October?
I'd say like
Gotta be
18 or
over
so,
20.
19. Yeah.
18
He
and a
always
half?
starts slow. Yeah, he always starts slow, so that's why my hesitancy there. But after
He's
that,
had
he
some
usually
like
picks it up.
16s, 17s, a 4-2.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna put it at 8. I'm gonna say 17 and a half to be nice. And I'm gonna put it on the Twitter poll and we'll see what people say. But if
Yeah,
you're in the
let's
comments, drop us a like. What do you think he clears 17 and a half points in October?
I mean, October's almost over. That's what, 3 games?
It's 3 games. You're right.
So it's like OKC and a couple other teams.
Yeah, I can look at the I can look up the schedule.
Do we have a
You know,
prediction for Thursday as well, or I don't know if that was like the last segment of the show. What do you guys think for
absolutely not.
Thursday?
Not for me.
You don't think so? Even with Hardenstein out?
I
No prediction.
I hesitate. 'Cause I don't know them. I mean, I know them as individual players, and I know their history, but I do think, I think every year your team is a different team. The identity is different, and I don't just it's hard to say what this is an inflection point for the team where they're trying to modify. I don't want to say change because a lot about who they are is going to be the same, but modify it in such a way. But that said, I do think they win the game. I think they beat the Thunder. I think they're better than the Thunder. Um, for the most part. They're not as deep, but I do think the players that will be on the court, namely Jokic, will be good. And so I'm going to read. Oh, it's 4 games for this month. It is the Thunder on Thursday. And then on Saturday, they play the Clippers at 3 o'clock. On Monday,
That's
they
early.
play the Raptors at 5:30. And then on Tuesday, they play the Nets at 5:30. So Thunder, Clippers, Raptors, Nets, 17 and a half points. I'm taking the over. I'm going to be optimistic.
Oh yeah.
I am curious as to what the community will say about it. But yeah. So Peter, I will absolve you of your prediction making responsibilities. But CT, I'm going to need you to pick up the slack. How do you feel about? We'll start with the Thunder.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, I would have actually liked Hardenstein to play because I wanted to see them at full strength and
Mhm.
like that new look where kind of Jokic would be in the paint instead of trying to guard Chet. Um, my prediction, I think the Nuggets win Thursday night. I think they come out firing. I think it's going to be a nice tone setter for the first couple games. But I could be wrong. But I don't know. I just have faith that they're going to do it. I think that Shea obviously is a bad matchup for the Nuggets for the most part, but um, Jokic against Chet is unfair, especially now that they really don't have many backup bigs either. So I think the Nuggets kind of pull out a win.
I also think it's a game that you can kind of, if they're paying attention to the narratives, which, guys see things, I think they'll likely be seeing that the Thunder are one of those teams that people have pegged as like, oh, clearly number one seed, they're going to win 60 games. They're going to be great. They have all this depth. They have all this talent. Denver, y'all don't even have any. You aren't even good anymore. You lost KCP. You lost Bruce Brown. Okay, Jamal Murray sucks. Michael Porter, he's not even top 75 or whatever. And I think they see these things. I think they recognize the importance, what this win could mean for them in the long term. And I think they come out hungry. Losing isn't fun. And I think they have that taste in their mouths right now.
I agree.
So
It should be fun. I'm looking forward to it. It should be a fun opening night game. TNT game as well. Should be fun.
And then Clippers, Raptors, Nuggets. I'm feeling like they could, if you win the Thunder game, you could win all those games because Kawhi's out, right?
Kawhi's out. Yeah, Kawhi's out.
Uh,
I don't think those teams are good. The Raptors
The
aren't good.
Raptors
The Nets
are not
stink.
good.
Nets are
Yeah.
horrible.
LA LA flu though.
Nets game's in LA, right?
Yeah.
Let me
Yeah.
see.
Yeah. The Nets are just going to be
Mm,
awful. I mean, they're tanking.
no,
for
it's in
Cooper
Ball
Flag.
Arena. The Nuggets
Oh
are at
wow, so
home.
it's home.
Yeah,
Oh.
3 o'clock on a Saturday.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm feeling actually, why can't the Nuggets starting out hot would also go a long way for their overarching goals. I'm sure Michael Malone will, be on them about that as well. So I'm optimistic. And yeah, I think that's about it for my takes. Oh, Lonzo Ball is back while we're maybe a little around the NBA. I'm excited for that. I feel like even I don't know how his career is going to go, but just seeing him on the court again, seeing that, doing Lonzo Ball things, being a good shooter, I it makes me, I don't know, it's a feel good story.
Yeah,
For
especially where
sure.
it's kind of sudden that he was out, and that he's back. And he was a guy I scouted a while back who I had a top 2 grade on when I was doing the draft prep for that class. So good to see him back in the mix. And I think he's a good player. So hopefully he's able to stay healthy. And the Bulls are somewhat good this year.
Do you guys have any win total projections for the season?
I saw 47 was the betting odds for the Nuggets, which seems pretty low.
But yours
That's pretty
personally, so
wild.
you take the over? Are we taking the over on
I'm
that?
taking the over at
Oh
47.
yeah.
Health provided. If Jokic and Murray are healthy for a majority of the year, I think that's a given.
I have, for me personally, this is the last year of Lonzo Ball's contract. He'll
Good
be
year
an
to come
Sounds
back at
right.
least. But yeah.
he'll be an unrestricted free agent next year. Just saying.
Welcome to
I
Denver.
don't think he would. Well, he is an injury risk. Yeah, I don't know, but not, and I mean that in like a maybe we can afford him way. I don't know, but yeah, I think par for me is 50 games. If y'all don't win 50 games, I'd be disappointed.
I agree.
And if I'm the Denver Nuggets, I would be I don't want to say they should win 60 games, but I would be aspiring to win 60 games. Not to say that like you have to, but I think that's like a good, achievable, but you have to get the best out of yourselves target to aim for. Yeah, that's how I feel. So
I think like 54 is the number that's like the sweet spot in my head of like that's kind of what I expect from like a baseline Jokic level team. 54 to 57, if everything goes right, 60 wins, but this team just doesn't really step on the gas like that. I mean, they were kind of forced to after the All-Star break last year. So, yeah, the start's going to be crucial and the young guys are going to be crucial, but I'm excited, they got the whole season to grow into their roles.
So this is like not an anti. This is a counter Matt Moore take. Veterans, being a veteran team, I appreciate the degree to which guys who have been there before, they know how to do what they need to do, and it just becomes a question of whether they can do it or not. But at least they will do what they can do. I think there's, the fact that the Nuggets are a younger team. I mean, their bench is also a lot better. Again, I think that's going to be huge. So many games they lost last year, I think, were just on the fact that the bench was terrible. But I also think when it comes to bringing that energy, bringing that fire to a night in, night out basis, it actually helps that the Nuggets are as young as they are. Like, I feel like they'll find more nights throughout the year where a Julian Strawther pops off for 20, 25 points. A Peyton Watson pops off for 20, 25 points. Sometimes, you're going to get like the Vlatko game where he goes 7 for 7 from 3. That you're going to get more from guys who, I mean, Russ is himself. I don't want to say Russ is young, but he has that energy for sure. You'll always see the output from him. So that you won't struggle as much, I think, now that you have more reinforcements and more energy and more youth. And because those young guys don't know that they should coast yet, I think that'll be good for the team and good for their win totals. That's how I feel.
For sure. And I also think that, when you look at the last couple of years, how bad the bench has been, that is so exhausting from the starters. Because we've talked about that before, how like even if Jokic is playing a 32, 34-minute game, it feels like a 40-minute game with how much energy and focus he has to put in, because you go in, you leave your first quarter stint up 8, you come back, it's tied. Now you're like, oh crap, well now I gotta build a lead again. After so many bench stints, it just kind of becomes mentally defeating knowing that you always have to win your minutes. I really do think one of the reasons the Nuggets won the championship in 2023 was because they had that huge lead after the All-Star break. They were coasting a lot in those games. It's really valuable sometimes for your starters to not have the best stint because they can coast and save some gas in the tank for April. And they weren't really afforded that opportunity last year. So I'm looking forward to a hopefully better bench this year.
Reminds me of my bowling team.
In what way?
We're not doing well. We're like last in our league, even though I'm bowling better than I've ever been.
You're the Jokic
but
of your team.
Ray is stat padding.
I'm at 216 is my average now, up to from it was 203 last year.
It's pretty good.
It's just there's a good and a bad about this because I don't have any handicap anymore. You get a handicap for your average relative to a certain number, which I don't have much of. But all my teammates, because they're bowling poorly, they're building up a really strong base of, big handicap. So I'm hoping that they get better. It's called sandbagging. Not that we're trying to do that, but hopefully as the season goes on, we can pick that up. All that is to say, we should probably go to bed. Do you guys have any parting shots for me?
No, thanks, Ray and Pete, for having me on. Always appreciate speaking with you guys and asking me to come on the show. Looking forward to another Nugget season. Hopefully, a championship is in the future. And thanks for having me on. And Wednesday night we're gonna do our preview space on Twitter. Got a couple people coming on. Hopefully, you guys could join as well. Would love to hear you guys' opinions on the Thunder preview and the rest of the season. I know we kind of went over it now, but it would be great for the Twitter people to hear what you guys have to say. So, thanks for having me on, and I'm sure we'll talk, Wednesday, Thursday for the game.
Yeah, I'm sure. Always happy to have you on. And Peter, thank you for joining us from Homer as well. It's always nice to connect the two ends of the United States with a podcast.
Back in the States.
Mm-hmm.
I want to just say, thanks to you guys for holding me down. I know you guys did a show when I was gone. And, just thanks to all of Nuggets Media, still churning along, putting out great content, DNVR, Locked on Nuggets with Matt, Swipa, and Ryan. Of course, Will and Grace, our favorite new Nuggets podcast. Still got Denver Stiffs. There's just always so many good people talking and writing about the Nuggets. I know I haven't been as active as I've wanted to be and probably won't be going forward these next couple of years, but life happens, but the world of basketball goes on.
Yeah. Shout out Matt Brooks as well.
Yeah. I know Rashad, the drop step, if anyone listening knows him, he dropped a video the other day about about Strother and Christian Brown.
I saw that.
Want to go check that out. And you can also find us on the interweb spaces. It's funny. I feel like Twitter it's definitely getting worse, but I don't have anywhere else. I don't have anywhere else to go. I think that's where we all are. So
you don't want to start the Nuggets Threads community, right?
No, the lesson I took away from the Reddit experience is that I need to streamline how many communities I manage. So you don't
want to be over communified.
Yeah, I don't want to be spread too thin with community. But you can find us on Twitter. I'm at Ravon Hagshaw. Peter's at Bucketsense88. CT is at CTFazio24. You can also find this podcast on your favorite podcast platforms. Drop us a like, maybe a review, tell a friend. You can give us a like on the YouTubes as well. Maybe subscribe if you're feeling so inclined. We really appreciate all the support. And you can also find, I mostly post bowling content on my personal page, at least for now. There's no basketball to talk about. So if you like bowling shorts, I have a lot of those. And I'm doing a first ball review I have 8 bowling balls, and I try to explain why, and that's basically what it's going to be. And yeah, maybe I'll go to some tournaments, vlog those, stuff like that. Anyway, thanks for making it this far on the show. We really appreciate you. And shout out to our producer Jarrett. He also does all the audio editing for the pod platforms and makes my voice sound not as bad. He does a great job. So I wanted to shout him out as well, even though he can't always be here with us. And yeah, thanks for listening. And then always go Nuggets.